Hey, just before we jump into the episode, I'm wondering if you're using Medic at your company, if you're an AE or a sales leader listening to this. I've implemented Medic 3 times when I was a VP of sales, and now I help sales organizations implement Medic with their teams. I've got a free deal scorecard that you can basically evaluate and score your opportunities using the MedPick framework to see where you've got gaps, where there's risk in your forecast, so that you can identify them and do something about it and mitigate that risk. So if you want to get a copy of that, head over to the website. There'll also be a link in the show notes. Go to the revenueenabler.com. You'll see there's a drop down called the Learning Hub. Then there's a button called the Downloads. When you go there, you're looking for the MedPick deal score sheet. You can get instant access to that, as well as other things like the What We've Heard slide, my ghosting playbook, cold call scorecard, story builder, AI sales assistant, and so much more. So head over to the revenueenabler.com, go check out the Learning Hub and our downloads, and let's jump into the episode now. All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hit Your Numbers podcast. This is a topic that I wish I had access to more content when I stepped up and became a sales leader. To start with, today we're going to be talking about how to reduce AE ramp time. And I'm joined today by Mike. Hey Mike, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good, thank you, James. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Same here. Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, cool. So I think I talk a lot about enablement for salespeople. I think we get even less enablement when we step up and become a people leader. So I'm looking forward to today turning this into like a mini masterclass, so that if there's a sales leader listening to this that's been in seat for a while but struggling, or a new rep that's just got promoted to sales manager, they can actually apply some of this training, in this conversation into their organization, into their business. So Mike, just before we jump into the conversation about reducing time to ramp, give the listeners maybe just the 30,000 foot view. Who's Mike? Where are you today? What's your background? And we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah, thanks very much. And obviously, thank you very much for having me on the episode. Really keen, as you said, to get into the nitty gritty of this piece in terms of the onboarding. So yeah, my name's Mike. I am the sales manager at TAMI AI. I've been in tech sales for almost the guts of 10 years now. So originally from Stafford, moved down to London. And yeah, I've held a number of roles across the sort of sales funnel essentially. So started off as an AE, moved into sort of senior, and then ended up being a team leader, which was where I first got my first taste of this piece in terms of ramping people and helping people develop. I've done SDR leadership as well, outreach, and now I'm here at TAMI, running the whole sales team from SDRs to AEs. So getting everyone trained up to speed. We don't have a sort of enablement person here, so it all falls on my shoulders. So yeah, it's something that I'm very keen about, and obviously keen to make sure that my team always feel like they've got enough in hand to go and be successful and try and get them successful quickly as well.
Love that. It's the whole purpose of a manager, right? Is to make their people successful, and you hire the right people.
Exactly.
It's made a lot easier, right? Okay, lovely stuff. So let's jump into the conversation. So a lot of the leaders that I work with, based on the business that we run, they're always trying to find a way of shortening that time to full quota and trying to think about what they can do to accelerate that. I guess a bit like they are with the sales process. And some of them take that thinking and curiosity on how do we reduce our time to close, same with how do we reduce the time to full quota with our new account executive. So from your perspective, what do you think we can be doing to get reps up to speed, especially AEs, really, really quickly as possible? Like, what's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a multitude of factors, and it comes from making sure that they have as much clarity around what's expected to them in their role, and they also know what they are coming into as well. So one of the main things that I think is really important, especially if you're bringing someone brand new into the organisation in that AE role, is giving them stuff to learn about the business before they even get into the role. So if they've got a month that they're moving over, or they've got a few weeks before they actually start the job, how much more can they learn about the team, the product, and the environment before they've even started? So that for us is going to look like sending them call recordings and making sure that they've actually seen what a demo looks like. It's going to be things like essentially making sure that they have looked at the competitive landscape and they know how to pitch TAMI and what we would do differently to some of our main competitors. And then when they're actually in the door, I think there's a couple of different things that we can do to essentially just speed up that understanding where the value is, where the unique selling points are. So we are implementing tests for every week that they're at the business. So they're bringing in, they're given a sort of criteria, and then at the start of the week and then at the end of the week, they're sort of tested on their understanding of that, whether that's knowing what our ICP is, whether that is knowing how to handle a specific objection. These things are all going to help actually benchmark where they were this week versus last week and get them up to speed quicker. We operate in a buddy system as well. So sitting them with someone who has been there, done the role, understands the essentially the ethos of how to be successful within TAMI. One of my favourite things, get them on the phone as quickly as possible. Make sure that they are testing themselves out, failing fast, learning fast, because I think you can only ever really get the true experience by living it yourself. And then it's just all about making sure that the documentation is correct. So having specific places where they can access all of the right content, whether it's process, whether it's methodologies, checklists of what needs to be done throughout the process, just so that they've got a one-stop shop that they can always relate back to and feel comfortable saying, actually, I looked at this, here's my question, rather than saying, I don't know how to run a demo or I don't know how to run a trial. They've got the documents. What they need to then understand is how to do it in the live function, essentially.
Yeah, I love that. And I think let's play back some of the things that we're hearing here just so the listeners can unpack that a bit further and then think about how they can implement that today into their sales organization. So the first thing I wrote down, what I read between the lines you're talking about there, Mike, is clarity. So I'm big on setting expectations very, very early and laying out our operating standards and principles. These are the behaviors and the way that we operate as a sales organization and as a business. And this is kind of the gray area and the grey line that we don't kind of cross. We expect you to be on this side of it. I was actually interviewing a founder the other day, a good buddy of mine who runs a recruitment organization, and he was like, "This should be done before the rep joins the organization, so that both parties have got clear expectations of what is expected of us." So let's say I'm your AE. I'm going to write down what I believe you expect of me, and then what I expect of you. You're going to do the same. We're going to meet and agree on those things to make sure there's none of this. Oh, I thought it was this, and it's actually more like this, and this isn't a good fit. And now you just spent a load of time, effort, and money, and made no progress. Is
Couldn't
that
agree more.
what you're kind of getting at there? Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think having a bit of a code of conduct, having sort of expectations that are clear across the business, and that also the people that are in the business buy into, right? So these shouldn't just be set from management. They should be agreed on as A's, SDRs, whatever the role is, that it's what time you turn up, how you act within the office, how you support your teammates. All of that should be a collaborative process so that then when you're actually, as you said, agreeing to bring someone on, if they agree with those principles and anything sort of falls off the wayside, you can always pull it back to, right, these are the principles we live and die by. You've agreed to them, so let's stick to them because everyone else has come to this as a collective unit.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And I think it's absolutely okay and something we need to reinforce here. When I'm a VP of sales, I'm absolutely okay for the SDR to pull me up on the expectation if I'm not following through on what they asked of me. If they ask for me to give them brutal, honest feedback twice a week on their cold calls, and I've cancelled the last two sessions, you pull me up and pull me to the side and have that conversation, right? Because I'm going to do it to you, and there should be that connection between the two. And I think again, setting those standards helps speed things up because people know they have clarity on what is expected of me, so I should just get on and do those things. I've been in an organization when I was an AE once, and I actually had to push for an onboarding plan to be created because they're like, hey, here's your laptop. here's CRM, this is kind of what our product does. We still don't really have clarity on what that is because we're figuring it out. Just go do some stuff. And I'm like, cool, but like, who am I talking to? What do I say to them? How do I know if I'm doing it the right way? Right. And it's just wild that I had to do that. And again, you nailed it. Just get some clarity around those things. The other thing that you wrote down, and I think, again, this is another thing that we should think about around acceleration, is I wrote down pre-boarding. So we spoke about onboarding, but that's when their bum is on our seat. What about before their bums on our seat? So they've got that month or 3 month kind of handover process. Let's get them access to our learning management system where we've got those cool recordings, we've got the documentation of our playbook, we've got our exit criteria and all of that kind of stuff. They can start to consume that stuff that sometimes is like a bit tick boxy, the HR-y kind of stuff. So that, like, if we do that stuff well and there's good documentation, why the hell can't we have a rep on a cold call, an AE building pipeline in the first couple of days they're through the door? Just
Completely.
because we've not done it before doesn't mean we can't do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one of the things that is something that we're making as a change as we're about to hire more people is actually just giving them access to our platform. There's no reason why they shouldn't have access to the service that they're going to sell
Yeah.
before they actually even start. Play around with it, try and break it, ask the questions, come in excited to sell something rather than first day and then you've got to learn it for a period of time. It's giving people the opportunity to spend time when they are transitioning from one role to another, getting to used to what their new reality is going to be. And as you said there, it just means that you can come in with questions and trying to understand it rather than getting there first day and going, oh, I don't know how to set up my logins. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know why we would pitch that piece. It's a really key thing, I think, in terms of making sure that people feel also excited to start. They've got their hands on what they're going to do. And if as an organisation you can give someone access before they start, I think that's highly, highly recommended from my side.
Yeah, 1,000,000% agree. I think that's so important. You might even find like the really, really good ones will turn up and be like, hey, I've been thinking about my demo flow. Would it be okay if I, role played that with you and you gave me some feedback? And what if they did that on like the second day?
Amazing. Absolutely
World
amazing.
class, right? Totally. Another thing you mentioned is about testing. So I'm massive on like certifying reps and making sure that there's readiness in place. Blows my mind that we jump into an organization, we get taught about product, specifically product, very little about sales skills and processes you mentioned, and then the first time we practice is on like the chief marketing officer or the VP of sales or the head of HR, and we wonder why time and time again things don't go our way. Like, I'm massive on role play. I'm massive on like practicing on each other internally, not on expensive opportunities. But actually having a scorecard that says, right, Mike, like you're an AE, your job is to build pipeline and advance deals through the sales process and close them out. We're going to go through this almost like a bit like a sales funnel, teach you what to do, show you how to do it. You're going to do it internally. We'll sign you off and then we'll let you out into the wild only for that part. And then we'll move into stage 2, stage 3, and so on and so forth. And this is where you can blend technology to scale this stuff and have them like submit a pitch submission so that if you want to, when you're on the train on the way home, you can be listening back to it and getting ready to give feedback the next day. You don't have to do it between 9 to 5. That stuff for you as the manager can be done outside. So you can be spending most of your time with your reps, helping them win deals and advancing the business. What's your kind of take on that, and how do you currently implement those tests through the new hire onboarding?
Yeah, as you said, I think it's an incredibly valuable way of making sure that, as you say, you don't burn opportunities. I actually just had two of my SDRs promoted from SDR to AE, and a whole part of their process was, yes, they had a normal sort of standard interview, but they had to do a demo, they had to do a trial practice, and they got scored on it based on a criteria that we'd set. So we knew if they were going to be AE ready by the time that they jump on the phones. And those live abilities to practice on someone within the business who, to be honest, can probably be the nastiest prospect that you're ever going to have, and really push the boundaries and test you. then just gears you up to be ready when you get onto those live calls and the situations with those VP of sales, with those CMOs who are going to be like, I'm not here to waste my time. You
Yes.
need to be providing me with value. And if you can certify that your reps are getting to that point already, you feel a lot more confident as a manager going forward.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And that scorecard is so important, right? Because it's not just going to be focused on like technical capabilities for what you sell. It's also going to be helping them connect the dots from their current state to their future desired state, where do they want to be, what's the criteria that they need to get there, and how will they measure success. And you'll be scoring them on all these key components so that when you give feedback, it's not what my gut's telling me. It's based on what world class selling looks like at our organization based on our context and the market and things like that. So it takes all of the emotion out of the conversation. It's just factual. This is where you did a really good job. This is where we need to improve. Here's the one thing I think we should focus on between now and our next assessment. Here's some resources. Go away. Shout if you need my help. I'll see you on Tuesday so we can get this thing signed off and get you out into speaking to customers.
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
that. And I think the main thing with that as well is it sets, as you mentioned, their benchmarks. So from week 1 to week 2 to week 4 to week 8, they can sit there and go, oh, look where I was in week 1. Look how much I've developed in 2 months. It gives you a sense of achievement, and they can sort of sit back and go, right, it's not just do I know I'm doing well, it's I can see I am doing well, and I've really ramped up my speed to basically becoming the AE that we need them to be.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned buddies up. So I was interviewing a VP of sales the other day, and I referenced this kind of term around ride-alongs. So there's a film, I think there's a couple of them actually with Kevin Hart and Ice Cube.
Yeah,
And Ice Cube is you've probably seen it, right? He's a cop, and Kevin Hart, his partner's like, go out and spend a day and see if you want to be a police officer or something like that. And he has to see exactly what it's like, right? And I think that's the power of being in the office. I'm all for my last two teams I built were hybrid, but mainly work from home. But something about getting in an office, sitting next to somebody, and watching how they operate. How do they build a call plan? How do they build a business case? How do they do stakeholder mapping? How do they maintain a good list? Like those little things that you just can't see when you're working at home. Um, yeah, ride along and show people what it's like to, to deliver and execute world-class sales process. Again, they'll start to pick little bits from it. It's like when you're in a busy sales floor, you take your headset off and you just go, oh, I really like that part. I'll take that. I don't really like what he said next, but she said something great there. I'm going to take that and I'm going to make my own version. You just don't
completely
get
agree.
that working from home.
No,
You just
you
don't.
don't. And I mean, we're an office first business. We're actually in 4 days a week, but the benefit of that is that you do see that scale of people learning off their teammates, going and asking questions. The amount of times you see the SDRs listening in to an AE's demo or their calls, and they go over and go, why did you do that? What's happening there? And they learn as they're going. And as you said, it's not about mimicking what someone does. It's about taking what's good about what they do, how they're doing it, taking the bits you don't like, and becoming your own salesperson, and using your personality, using your specific traits as a seller, but taking blends of the people that have been there, done it before, and are successful, and utilizing that when you're doing your own process. And yeah, as you said, you just can't replicate that virtually. You can ask questions, you can sit and watch calls with people, but that instant feedback and just that noise around you, just it's osmosis, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned about failing fast and getting on calls early. So, I mean, it's obvious based on the business I run, but I'm obsessed with like closing skill gaps and trying to make myself better, especially now I run this business and, I work with sales organizations. And I was doing a course online the other day, and it was about how do you cram an entire program into just 4 hours? I think it's even called Cram. And it's about taking things out that can be done before the session or after session as like reinforcement or as like prep, so that those 4 hours when you're delivering the training, you focus on the most important concepts and then spend time applying the training, reinforcing it, that kind of stuff. And I think as a sales leader, if we had our mindset of how do I get to a point where I can have my new AE make a cold call in the afternoon of their first day, like what do I need to do to get to that stage? Rather than literally, I get reps reach out and be like, hey, I've got myself a new job. I want to rejoin the program, but I'm not going to be selling for like a month or two. So just put me down for a call back in 2 months. And I'm like, call back in. why are we waiting a month, 2 months to get
crazy.
a rep to pick up the bonkers, right? And then they wonder why it takes so long to ramp and why they've not got enough pipe. And yeah, so just think, how can we, from a failing fast perspective, how can we get to a point where we can onboard a rep in the morning with who our customers are, what's wrong with their current state, how expensive the problem is, how we solve it uniquely or better than anybody else, and here's a couple of talk tracks, just so they can at least pick up the phone and make a cold call into some lost opportunity, some old inbound leads we couldn't reach because we know we've got good contact data for them, and just have them go and make 40, 50 calls and sit down with them the next day and take them through our feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And
It's pretty
it's
hard.
that instant feedback loop, right? So you can go in, get them calling, get them speaking to people, and it doesn't you're not selling anything at that point. They're just finding information. And that's I think the key thing to set as that expectation is at no point during this am I expecting you to book a demo or book a discovery call or even close an opportunity. All I want you to do is speak to who our prospects will be or who our customers are if it was an account manager and just understand them and have that conversation. One of my favorite sort of terms that I use with all of my reps is that, especially when you're selling, it should just be like having a conversation with a mate in a pub. It doesn't matter if it's a cold call, if it's a demo, you just ask to be curious and make it a really personal conversation of I'm interested in what you do and I'm interested to understand why that's going that way or what you're doing in this sort of process. And if at that point you uncover pain and you uncover a reason to change something, cool, go for it. Try and actually get a meeting booked in. But you're not expecting people to day one be like, right, just created 100 grand in pipeline. It's not going to happen. It's all
Yeah.
about setting that expectation for them, saying that they are going to just speak to the people that we speak to on a day-to-day basis and start to understand them and their profile and what they need. And at that point, you'll start to see that success happen much quicker.
Yeah. And also, like anyone that's listening to this and what Mike's saying there as well is like, think about how can we make onboarding actually quite fun and interactive. Like I remember one of the roles that I had when I was an AE, we used to play this game in our cold call script when we were building early stage pipe of like, how can we get like Michael Jackson song lyrics into the scripts when we're making cold calls? And just have a bit of fun with it, right? So it doesn't have to be, hey, like now your job is to pick up the phone. You need to book 7 meetings, otherwise you're going to be put on a pip. It's like, hey, actually, why don't you just see if you can go and tell this customer story to 5 people and just come grab me when you have, and we'll jump into the call recording tool and listen to those and see how you got on. Or how about you try and ask 3 people this afternoon for a meeting? Don't worry if all of them say no, but go and ask 3 people if they want to learn a little bit more about how we solve this big business problem, and let's just see what they say.
Yeah,
And then help them just go and do that, right? And again, let's just make it more fun, more interactive, more than like, hey, now you've got your job. Now we've done the 2-week boot camp with you, and I need some return.
yeah, exactly.
Go find me some deals. Like you start to create this
It takes the
unnecessary
pressure off, doesn't
stress.
it? Yeah,
Yeah, massively. It is
and
scary getting a new job.
of course it is, and I think the first day is probably the scariest of all of them. And also, there's an element of sort of chucking people in feet first, and them just having to sort of go, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to jump on. You take away the fact that maybe later on, if they're building themselves up to this end of 2 weeks, and suddenly at the end of 2 weeks, I've got to start booking meetings. You build pressure by doing that, whereas actually you reduce it by just drip feeding it in. As you said, having a bit of fun with it. Our favourite one's always around Christmas, mentioning how many reindeer you can get into a conversation, which is
Yeah,
a
nice.
challenge.
Yeah, that is a
But
tough one. The Michael Jackson lyrics were a little bit easier. Yeah, yeah,
getting Rudolph into a conversation is difficult, but it's one of those things that you can really just break down the sort of fear, as you said, of starting a new role and going, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, actually, we expect you to not know what you're doing, but go try some things, see what works, come back,
yeah.
reiterate, and go again.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Totally agree with you. All right, let's shift gears to time. And look, I think this question is very different for a lot of organizations, but I'd be curious to get your perspective on it. From your world that you operate in, how long should onboarding last? And let's split that actually between like the knowledge part versus execution and getting to quota. Like what does that look like for you and your team?
Yeah, I think it's a great question that you've broken it down into the two pieces, because it is key to sort of say onboarding, in a sense, I think should be quick in terms of getting people used to it, as we've just said, getting people on the phones quickly, getting them to fail fast, knowing what we're doing early. So I think that's probably a sort of 2 week window where they're looking at understanding the product, the USPs, the ICP we sell into, the personas, why we're good against our competitors. All of that sort of stuff can be done in the first couple of weeks, and it can be something where they build their understanding of the industry and the terminology that they need to understand. And then for the rest of it, it's sort of 3 to 6 months, depending on how quickly the rep really sort of takes hold. It can be 3 months where they start putting money on the board and they start feeling like they've got enough pipeline just because of the deal cycles, and getting an opportunity from open to close can take roughly around sort of 3 months in our world. Um, but I also think onboarding should be essentially 6 months long, because you shouldn't just go, okay, 3 months, you've closed your first deal, we don't need to onboard you anymore. It's got to be that iterative process. And again, is that benchmarking that we mentioned earlier, where they know this is what good looks like at the moment, but good looks very different on day one to what it does on day 60, on day 90. Every time we're looking to sort of kick them on, set those expectations of, to get to the next level, you need to do this. So let's say that's the next time you do a demo, you need to make sure that you've got real business pain, you've understand the return on investment that it can make, and you've asked for a consequence of no change. If you still do the same thing, are you going to lose out? And that is a very different conversation than most reps would have in month one. So it's just making sure that that continues, the learning develops, and we make sure that they understand what good looks like in a month, 2 months, 3 months.
So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills, and it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to the revenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions. And I guess that comes back probably to your very first point you opened up the session with around clarity and expectations and how we operate as a sales organization to help them do those things quickly, right? Having that almost production line. If you think about how Ford make a Ford, at one end there's a bunch of parts, and at the end there's a car that can be driven out of the showroom, and there's just these checkpoints the whole way through, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If we can document it like that, it's very easy for people to follow.
And I think the good thing about that, right, is that no one does it perfectly. Like, we'd all love to sit here and pretend that we've all done it perfectly. I've made so many failures in onboarding and bringing on reps, and it's about also getting feedback from the reps that have gone through it. So if you've got reps coming in every 3, 6, 12 months, whatever that process is, making sure that you ask the ones that are 6 months in how they found the onboarding process and what you can do to change it so that the next slot can be brought on quicker. So I think the main thing I would say to anyone that's listening as well is, don't beat yourself up. If this is the first time you've ever brought somebody on, you're going to be able to do quite a lot of this, but you might not get it completely right. And actually, the best way that you can do things moving forward is ask them to even do a feedback as well. So whether that's a type form or something where they can fill in comments and know as a manager what you can help them do better moving forward.
Oh, such a good point, Mike. Like, I think like lowering the ego, dropping that barrier, and being open to taking that feedback. I was talking to a buddy of mine this morning who's recently stepped up into a sales leadership role, and I said, if you've not got the right people in your organization, or if your reps aren't executing, hitting the quota, that's not on them. It's 100% reflection on your leadership. If you've hired the wrong people and you wouldn't hire them again, you need to go back, look at the scorecard, and figure out, where did I make a mistake because this person shouldn't have got this far. If you would hire them again because all of the characteristics you assessed them on in the interview process was good, then it has to be down to onboarding, how you inspired, motivated, coach, developed that person to become great. And all of this is a reflection on your leadership. And I remember my first VP of sales role made a crazy amount of mistakes. Some of them were stupidly expensive. That's the only problem when you step up, right? Is the mistakes get bigger. But I was saying to him, I said, look, if you're not getting the outcomes that you want to be having in those one-on-ones and those coaching conversations, why not record them, get the transcripts, build a custom GPT, feed it with what great coaching and one-to-one execution looks like, and then just drop your transcript in and have it score the call and say, hey, I think this was a good conversation. However, I think these are opportunities for you to improve. Next time I would do this differently. Right. Just like Gong, or like Gong equivalents now that are being built for like recruitment teams when they're interviewing people to make sure that we don't, to avoid those mishires. Eventually, I've got no doubt that some techie out there will build a Gong version for one-to-ones and coaching conversations, because most of us step up as managers without the coaching and the training. So we go out there and we're making this stuff up in the conversation, right?
It's so true, and I think that's one thing that is lacking for pretty much any leader is they get moved up if they've been an AE and then they suddenly become a leader. You are really thrown in at the deep end, and there isn't many places or many people that deliver really good coaching in that side of things. And also, some of it's hard to coach because you have to learn as you go. One to ones, it's hard for someone to sit in a one to one and sort of coach it without it feeling a little bit forced. So I think your idea there of it being recorded, and actually, if let's say, for example, you are a sales manager and you want to give that to your VP of sales, it's so much better if it's done properly one to one, recorded, and then your VP can read the transcript or hear how it played out rather than them sort of sitting in, because you know for a fact you and your rep are kind of probably clam up and not have a normal one-to-one in that instance.
Yeah, and just frame it with the rep. Like, if you was my A, I'd say, "Hey, Mike, I want to record this conversation. Just like this conversation is designed to make you a better seller. I care about becoming a better leader so I can serve you better and make you a better salesperson. Would it be okay if I recorded this just so that I can get some feedback on how I'm running this conversation with you?" Like, frame it, ask the question. Like, if anyone says no to that, then you probably got something else you need to solve in your business, right? And then put it into AI, or like you said, give it to your VP of sales and say, look, I'd love your feedback on this. I'm really struggling with Mike. Feel like maybe I'm not approaching it in the right way, because surprise, surprise, if we had a lot of training as leaders, we'd know there's different learning styles. People take things on in a different way. I can't see what I'm doing wrong. Can I get a second opinion? And they'll spot it like that, right? And then next minute you implement it, and boom, me and Mike are now jamming and things are going in the right direction.
Yeah, completely agree. It's one of those things that is so lacking in the leadership piece. And I know we're talking about AA onboarding here, but it's again, as a leader, you have to just make sure you're reiterating the best practice, trying to improve the way you do everything in your role, whether that's a one to one, whether that's a coaching session, whether that is an onboarding session, whether you're doing a demo run through with people, having an ability to have that feedback loop is always going to be massively beneficial.
Yeah, well, training and coaching your AE, there's probably nothing on the planet that you can put into place that will have a bigger impact on ramp time than doing those things effectively. So, again, like, having some level of ego, I think, is good and healthy in sales, but leave the unhealthy part at the door and come in, with an open mind and, prepared to learn, just like you're asking your sales reps. And again, you will speed things up because you'll get feedback on, hey, this isn't really helping me become an AE. Can we try it in a different way? And I might find that's the reason for all of the rest of the AEs that are, taking longer to ramp. Mike, I want to pick your brain before we kind of wrap here. So obviously we're now living in a world with AI; it's everywhere, and I think it's only going one way. I'd love to get your perspective on how AI can help with onboarding reps and trying to get AEs to full quota faster. Like, what are you seeing? What are you testing? What are you seeing that's working?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two main things that I have found that have helped me so far, and one thing that I would like to test out is enablement documents. The speed of which I can make an enablement document is unbelievable now. Something that you would probably have taken me hours and hours to put together and sort of stitch together. I use ChatGPT to essentially input a prompt that's going to help. Let's say, for example, one that I did yesterday was what our ICP is, the key markets that we sell into, why we're better than our competitors, and it's just a really simple battle card that I then put into Gamma, and it produced this fantastic presentation that I can now share with my team, upload into our hub where we store all of our sales documents. I did that in the space of 20 minutes, half an hour, if that. And it's something that I even vetted with one of my newest reps, saying, if I'd given you this at the start, what would you have thought? And she was like, brilliant, perfect, not too complex, not too, like, it got more than enough information. I think the other thing is the deep research. Getting, again, this can go into whether it's pre onboarding or actually in onboarding, setting them challenges to do deep research into TAMI, competitive market, what we do, who we are. And then when they're in the business, getting them to do deep research on an account in the same way that if they were going to prospect it, here's a customer that we already have. If you were going to sell to this customer, how would you have pitched it? What would you have done? Who are the people you would have reached out to? Can you build an org map? And getting them to use AI to get that, whether that's Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude, whichever one takes people's fancy, so that they can learn how to do that as efficiently as possible, so that when they do get their book of business and they do get their accounts, they've already got a framework of how to get that done and they can access it quickly. And I think the final one is one thing that I do want to test out. Is something I've seen quite a lot over the internet recently, especially on LinkedIn, is the AI role plays that you can get.
Yes.
So you can get some essentially tech you can do back and forth role plays with, and think about objection handlings, load them in. That for me is great because not everyone has the time to sit with a rep and do role plays. And actually, the more time you take off the team on the floor doing their job to go through role plays, can we give new starters a bot or an AI agent where they can use that as that real back and forth, load in a load of our calls that we've had before, and we've got TAMI to have a conversation with and go back and forth. So that's one thing I'm keen to test out in the next sort of 3 to 6 months.
Million percent. Something I was doing this morning for about 3 hours was getting ready for James GPT. I don't know if that's going to be the official names. If you're listening to this in a couple of months' time, we might have changed it. But in the last 12 months, I've been really nerding out about custom GPTs. I built about 30 of them now. Um, and I just got really curious about when I'm delivering training, how can I build AI to do the reinforcement? Especially because a lot of the customers are like sales teams of like 10 to 30 sales reps, but they're usually super low on the manager side,
Yeah.
so that the capacity is just not there, right? So I was like, hey, if I want this program to be a success, how do I help the manager reinforce it? So I built a couple of like custom GPTs where I trained it on all of the materials, hours and hours of transcripts, and fed it into them. And then like when we're doing like a medic deployment, we have a metrics one. So a leave behind is, hey, here's a GPT. Um, Drop a call recording in there, or talk to it about an open opportunity, and it will help you build metrics or quantify metrics or build questions or score the quality of the metric you've got for your opportunity, so reps can actually reinforce it. And this morning I was literally just microphone, Playbook open, and I was recording all of the content around like medic that I train. And it's going to go into James GPT, which is going to be a medic coach. It's going to be available 24/7, 365. So that if a rep's got I don't know, an economic buyer meeting coming up, they can go in there and say, they can text it, they can call it and say, hey, I have like one of these AI avatars which will look like me, so they can invite it to a Zoom call. And it could be like a Sunday afternoon. They're like, right, Monday morning, I have an economic buyer meeting for a really important deal on my forecast. It's the VP of finance in an engineering organization in Leeds with 2,000 people. what would be the top 3 objections that they would give me that would kill this deal? And what would you recommend I do to overcome it? Here's my context. And it gives them like the 3 objections and it says, here, this is how you overcome it. And then you can do scenario planning and be like, right, this is how I would reply. And they can speak into the mic. Or I actually quite like the thinking here of them typing their answer into it, because they actually have to stop and think rather than like freestyling like we would do with the microphone. And it gets them to really think about, if that did come my way, what would I do? Maybe I'll get a feedback or a different opinion from my manager, so that if that does happen, I can leave everything on the football pitch at 90 minutes. And if the deal doesn't go my way, at least I know I gave it everything, rather than being underprepared, panicking, saying the wrong thing, losing the deal. And that's where I think AI can have a massive impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so good in terms of the way you sort of position it as well. The fact that it becomes just a agent that you can spend time questioning, working on things with. It's got all of the context of the business, the medic or medpic scenarios that it could come up with, and actually you can practice before going into a conversation, because every single one of us has been in a conversation where we think a deal's absolutely flying. We get onto a call and then suddenly someone drops a bomb of like bad news, and you're like, I don't even know how to deal with this right now. Like, I've got no rebuttal because I haven't really assumed that that was going to happen. And it's just making sure that you're prepared for both scenarios. You can use a challenger approach. If they do say something about timing or budget, you can base it back on all the success criteria at the start of the conversation. And then suddenly, when you get into that conversation with an EB, you're actually talking about ROI, you're talking about success, you're talking about, if you don't change, this is what's going to happen. And again, it pulls into those unique selling points. If you've got something that is unique, that is solving a true business and personal problem, that you can then ask this chat GPT or agent and say, if we get to this scenario and they say we're not ready to go ahead, how do I go back and say, well, you mentioned this earlier on, why has that changed? What's going on?
And also, deal review with me and have the AI ask me, like, I've got one which is like a forecast assistant for sales reps. It's like, hey, I'm going into a forecast meeting tomorrow. Um, I'm going to be asked about my committed deals. Can you ask me some questions that would make me think about which category they should go into? And it's like, cool, what problem are you trying to solve? What's causing that problem to exist? If there's lack of urgency, it's probably because of impact. What's the impact of that problem? Who else in the business cares if you socialized it? Who's your person? When did you last test them? Those kind of things. And it gets the reps to then think, shit, maybe this deal actually isn't forecast ready. So it's probably going to stall out and slip, maybe ghost, maybe I'll have egg on my face. But actually, do you know what? I probably should know a lot of this stuff about my opportunities, and I don't. And if you've hired the right people that are self-aware, they're coachable, they're adaptable, they'll see that and go, right, I need to know this stuff. I'm not capturing it. I'm going to work with my manager. I'm going to go back through that onboarding piece again, and then I'm going to go through and execute that. And again, that's where AI can really help a manager or a sales leader that's, strapped for time. They're time poor. They've got lack of capacity. They know they should do all of this stuff, but they can't. And I've been there. That's where AI can help. And it's super exciting.
I think it's that reflection point, right? It's giving them another avenue. Like, if your manager doesn't have time to have a chat with you, you've got something to lean on and go, actually, I'm going to ask that questions first. And then if I need to go and chat to my manager, I've already thought of the solution that I'm going to go with and run that by them. And at that point, you would hope you can come to an agreement that actually, yeah, cool, you're ready to go, you're all prepared. Fingers crossed you can execute.
Yeah, 100%. Mike, this has been killer. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in here. I just feel like, from a recap perspective, clarity, like, make sure you document clear expectations, operating standards. Think about building a car. Think about that full production line. Can you document it? Don't do it overnight. And also have your existing team help you do that. Go to your reps that are smashing their number, either building big pipeline or closing big numbers, and have them say, hey, like, what do you do 100% of the time at this stage, this stage, this stage? You then pull it all into the playbook, and then that can feed pre-boarding, so that 1, 2, 3 months, whatever it is before they join, they can start to consume some stuff and start to hit the ground running from day one. I think if we had a focus on how do I get a rep to pick up the phone in the afternoon of their first day, we may never get to there. But if we focus on trying to get there, we would definitely accelerate the time to quota for sure. Pre-boarding, I loved that. Testing, big on readiness assessments. Buddy up, ride along, get in the office, listen to what your peers are doing. So good. And then just creating that culture of like failing fast. It's okay to make a mistake. In fact, I'm expecting you to make them. If you don't, I'm probably going to question application because it's a sales. You're going to mess up. I'd rather us mess up internally first, but I also want to go and listen to a couple of train wrecks in the call recording tool because I know we're out there trying to figure things out. So epic. Anything you'd leave us with, Mike?
I think the only final thing that I will probably sort of leave it with is just we talked about trying to make things fun. So give people rewards for hitting certain benchmarks as they go. As they're going through, celebrate that they've done their first cold call, they've done their first demo, they've booked their first meeting. Make it fun and exciting so that they can constantly feel that reward benefit from going through it. Onboarding is always that bit where salespeople are chomping at the bit to just get going, but sometimes you've just got to make sure it's done, measured properly, they're hitting those goals, and when they hit those goals, whether it's giving them some time off, giving them a little bit of a break, an early finish on a Friday because they've just smashed out their first load of cold calls, perfect. Just make sure that it's fun, it's exciting, and they feel that sense of achievement as well.
1,000,000%. Love that. It's probably a topic on its own there. Maybe we'll get you back and we'll go into a little bit more detail about how we can run spiffs and things like that, and how do we, share the successes. Because again, I think a lot of people only celebrate close won deals, but what about when we finally qualify a champion, or when we build a business case and there's 3 people that agree this is the right thing to do? That should be celebrated. Like, there's all these little small wins that I think drive behaviors that usually don't get seen. You only get seen when you ring the bell or hit the gong. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. It's like I had one of my reps message me the other day and they just literally sent me a call and were like, that felt like a good call. And you want reps to feel that they're like, listen to that, I've done something better than I did last week. And that incentive of like, I'm feeling like I'm doing better just feels a way that they're going to go, actually, every single time I do this now, I want to be better and better and better. And when it talks to ramping, if you can just improve just 2-3% every time you do something, you're going to end up as a good rep very quickly.
Yeah, that's a great final takeaway. I guess mine's connected to that, which is making sure that as a sales leader, you're creating a culture where people can do the opposite and they'll send you the bad call. And they'll say, this was a train wreck. I know it was. I think I know why. Would you listen to it and see if we're aligned, or see what else you would say about that? Most people will only share good calls because the sales leader doesn't create the safe space where it's okay to raise your hand and say, look, I've kind of shit the bed here. So if you want to speed things up, make it feel okay and safe for people to say, I've done a bad job. I need you to help me solve it. Because guess what? You'll solve the problem faster. And then they'll go off and hit quota. Mike, that was killer. Thank you so much for carving the time out of your busy schedule. Look forward to sharing this with the listeners.
Awesome. Cheers, James. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you soon. This episode is sponsored by I'm Just Playing, but I do have 2 things for you today. So we recently released a mini prospecting course, 100% free to access, where I break down the script that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings per month. There's a lesson on how to write great first outbound emails. And then there's another lesson on video and voice note prospecting and best practices. And there's so much more in the course as well. If you want to get free access, just click the link in the description below. Now, alternatively, I said there's a second thing. Maybe you don't need prospecting support, but maybe you need help running better demos or scoring your deals with MedPick, or you need help with prospects that are ghosting you. If this is the case and you want to unlock some of these trainings and resources, go ahead and join the prospecting course anyway, because you'll find there's other resources and more content in the mini content vault folder. So go sign up today and unlock these resources.